Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we're going to talk about Warhammer the Old World, but in a very different way today. You see, Warhammer the Old World is the new Warhammer Fantasy Battle, essentially. It's a specialist game that's going to get released by Games Workshop on the tabletop, and it's something that a lot of people have been waiting for. Now, every now and then Games Workshop drop news on it. It's kind of sporadic, but it's going to likely be more frequent this year, as this is the 40th anniversary of Warhammer Fantasy. And everyone's either expecting a release this year, or at least a trailer to drop to release next year. It's one of those things. Now, anytime I do cover this, there's a little bit of a confusion when it comes to my channel, because I know a lot of people know me mostly for Total War Warhammer. However, I would say that both of them are linked, and hell, a lot of things that do come into Warhammer the Old World would highly benefit and likely influence the future of Total War Warhammer 3. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about that and just have a little bit of a breakdown. So cross-promotion has always been a big thing for various companies. Games Workshop have only recently discovered its potential. I know, it's taken them a while, 40 years in fact. Well, less, but you know what I mean. Before the announcement of Total War Warhammer 3, we already kinda knew that KISLEV was going to be coming because KISLEV was announced for Warhammer the Old World. New miniatures means new potential. In fact, it's already flat out confirmed that the KISLEV army that we see in Warhammer 3 is going to be what we're going to be seeing in Warhammer the Old World. This is actually quite important because you can already see that the influence and the streams are crossing, right? This is further taken on later on, where we had the announcement and confirmation of Warhammer 3. Cafe was confirmed to be a base game race, which, you know, absolutely amazing. We never had a proper Cathayan army even on the tabletop. And then later on, Cafe was confirmed for Warhammer the Old World. Mind you, they kind of confirmed it without confirming it, as a lot of artwork came out which just had the Old World logo, not the Warhammer 3 logo. So yeah, you can already see the influence there. Again, the units that we know from Grand Cafe and Warhammer 3 are going to be the units that we're going to be able to use in Warhammer the Old World. Same thing with the characters, but the characters are obviously quite ageless, so this is why Zhao Ming and Meow Meow are there. So how can this further benefit Warhammer the Old World and Total War Warhammer 3? Well, first up, and probably the most important to the player base of Total War, is new races and factions. A lot of people are asking for the Kingdoms of Ind, the Snake Men of Koresh, the Shogunate of Nippon, Talia, Araby, Estalia, all these factions which are in lore, which have their own dedicated lore, some more than others, but do not have tabletop miniatures, do not have really a lot of reference. The references themselves have to come from Games Workshop. Games Workshop is the one that kind of decides, yes, you can do Cafe, yes, you can do Ind, and so on to all the other companies, right? So CA need some source material and obviously approval before such DLCs can happen. Interestingly enough, when directly asked by a fan, Games Workshop actually did kind of say, yeah, you never know for the future, which is actually kind of good because normally they just flat out ignore those questions. So there's a possibility for Ind and Nippon and Koresh. It's just a matter of time. These things will take a few years. There was mentioned in an older interview that to create Grand Cafe, they had to create a 8th edition army book. I'm using that as quotations because it's more than likely the army book is actually the Old World one, or a very stripped down version of 8 because they already had the basic rules sorted for Old World, but they see if it works on the tabletop and then can that work in Total War. Now I imagine that we'll slowly get more information, or at least some references to Ind, Koresh and Nippon in the far future when eventually we get a proper world map for Warhammer the Old World. I've mentioned this very, very often. It's really curious that Cafe was never shown to its pure size, right? When they did a map reveal for Cafe, it was actually just a little bit of the northern and western provinces, but that's pretty much it. And that's because, well, they're bordered by 3 other nations, which right now do not have anything else at the moment in terms of lore. Well, they've got a little bit, but you know what I mean. They're not a fully fleshed out faction, and they don't want people to start like hyping, oh, we're going to get these until a little bit later. The next thing is new units. And yes, I know we're already getting new units because of, well, KISLEV and Cafe, but not just for them. This is the thing. If you start looking towards all the other factions that we already have in the tabletop, in Total War, this is the Wood Elves, the High Elves, hell, even the Empire and everything in between, a lot of these factions are very close to done in a sense, right? I'm talking about units, because when you go into older editions of Warhammer Fantasy, all the way from 1st edition to 8th edition, and maybe even the End Times, because a few End Time stuff has crept into Total War, yeah, some factions are almost fully sorted. The Wood Elves, for example, have barely any missing units. The Ogres are kind of the same. So what would bring in new units that make sense in the lore? Well, Warhammer the Old World. It is, in fact, the same setting, just 200 years prior, and you have to take into account that not much has actually changed in technology-wise. Given the timeline that we've just been confirmed by Games Workshop, yeah, like steam tanks and stuff are already in use by the Empire. Think about all your favorite races and factions and think, well, what are they truly missing in terms of units? Like, for example, I would love to see clan rats with additional hand weapons because it kind of makes sense. That can happen with Old World, as it would be a new army book, and we finally get an update to Skaven models, which, yeah, it's been a while. Or, even better, Bretonnia actually having a proper foot soldier front line, you know, knights on foot. So it's not all about cavalry. Yes, cavalry is still the main focus, but it gives you a little bit to play around with and try different army compositions for a more roleplay aspect for your specific dukedom. Plus, let's be honest, from a Total War aspect, it's kind of weird that you're being sieged and you can't have knights on foot defending the walls. In fact, you're just having peasants defending the wall, which is just weird. And the last thing would be characters, both old and new. Yeah, that sounds a bit weird, but hear me out, right? Obviously, it wouldn't be humans and stuff, because a lot of humans, you know, they grow old and they die. Or they just die in general because it's Warhammer and it's not safe. However, many characters that feature around this point of the timeline, these are already established ones, do actually survive until later on. I'm obviously referring to a lot of demons, elves, hell, even some Warriors of Chaos, because characters such as A called Hellbrass and so on, they fought around this time, and they died around the time of the End Times. So a lot of characters which were already established and just didn't really get fleshed out enough, this would be the perfect time to flesh them out more and have them as Legendary Lord or potentially Legendary Hero potential for Warhammer 3. But when we look towards possible new characters, we can look towards the demons and the elves. So a big thing here with the demons is that there's not really a lot of variety to bring in for multiple Legendary Lords. Same thing with the elves. A lot of characters do exist that, yeah, could be legendary characters, but they're very samey. And the issue is that if you have too many characters being the same, you don't have DLC potential, or even FLC potential, because people would get bored. Why would, say, for example, we get another Keeper of Secrets Legendary Lord, which is going to be very similar to Nikari, or another Great Unclean one, which is just going to be very similar to Kugath? What if during this period, new demons actually started popping up, which were they're always, essentially, you know, they were always here. And I'm not necessarily saying new types of demons, although that would be kind of helpful. I would absolutely love Bloodletters with additional hand weapons, for example, but just another Keeper of Secrets or another Great Unclean one, but, you know, with a different personality, with a different way of thinking and a different way of playing. I'm using the demons as a reference here because it's the demons which really don't have that many named characters, or unique named characters, better yet said. Like, really, there's 2 for Sinesh, and even then, it's not really that different. Well, the Mask and Nikari at this point. But, again, the elves. The elves would greatly benefit from this because I would love to see a bit more content for the elves, be it Wood Elves, Dark Elves, or even just, High Elves. I know High Elves are, I think, the most popular out of the 3, but they definitely need some new characters being established that is gonna make them less, yeah, samey. That's the most important thing. Anyways, with all that being said, I truly believe that both will work together, as we've already been kind of seeing, and we will obviously get some good content. I think it's important for Warhammer 3 fans, Total War fans that are interested in Warhammer to kind of keep an eye out on this type of stuff, just in case anything crops up that might eventually, you know, link up. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and let's start a bit of a discussion.